Okay, sorry about the sun. I'm dealing with different angles here. Today's video is going to be a kind of a vlog video, and I'm going to be talking about off-grid a little bit and the lawnmower repair hobby business that I've got. How it's kind of finally come to a head that you know, they're starting to interfere with each other, and I got to figure out how to resolve that issue. So as you know, I have this generator. I absolutely love this generator. It's a, by the way, I'm not a sponsor of Champion or anything. I've always used Champion since we started the nomadic lifestyle. What, gosh, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, a long time ago. So before they had dual fuel, I mean, they started to come out with it when we started traveling. We had this, it was a box. It looks like a box. These are called suitcases, but this box, it was an inverter, quiet generator like this one. It was a little louder than this one. But then they came out with the suitcases, and we bought two of those boxes. One we had before the fire, and it burned up in the fire. And then we bought another one that I messed up. I just messed it up. And then we bought an old one from Harbor Freight. No, Tractor Supply. They're Skitty. Everybody loves Skitty. So it's over here. It had over 8,000 hours on it. Ran forever. It always smoked a little. It was a little disappointing, but it ran great and got us through the nomadic life, finished up the nomadic life, and then got us settled here. I ran it. When we moved here, I ran it for about a week straight after trying to get the solar panel set up and just tools running, and just ran it constantly. So when that died, I got this one. It's a 2,500 watt inverter generator, so it's a little bigger than that one I got over there. That was 2,000 watt, and it's dual fuel, so it runs off propane and gasoline. Now the propane is a nice feature, but it doesn't get as much power, and I run it off propane primarily, and the reason is I don't run this very often anymore. I got another generator down there, very small, just to charge the batteries. So I run that one primarily on cloudy days. This one, for a while I was running it to run the well, but once we got the solar panel set up in a fashion where we could run the well off the solar panels, I didn't even use this anymore. And just occasionally I would run it just so it would run. Then we had a little issue with it. It was hard to start on propane. I mean, the rope just would not pull sometimes, and when it was cold, just may as well forget it. You had to bring it inside, let it warm up. Well, I always thought it was a propane related issue, that it was getting compression lock. Turned out it just needed a valve adjustment. I adjusted the valves this last summer, has ran flawlessly ever since. I mean, it's always ran pretty good. That was just an issue that I struggled with, but I got that resolved. I just didn't have the tools to really adjust the valves until we started the lawnmower repair hobby business. So I guess kind of took it out of my head, but that's not what it is, because it didn't do it on gasoline, it just did it on propane. So like I said, I really enjoy this generator. Now I think it gets 1,600 watts on propane, running watts. It gets 1,850 on gasoline. So you get 2,500 peak. You know, it's kind of false advertising. I mean, it's important to know what your peak wattage is, but you also need to know what your running wattages are. Because if you're going to buy a generator and you think, oh, I got a piece of equipment that runs 2,000 watts, this will run it for a second, and then it's going to trip. The power over limit thing will trip right here. Forget what that's called, but regardless, so it just won't work. So if you want to run an air conditioner on your camper, the camper air conditioner, it won't run it. 15,000 BTUs, I think that is. But you can run a window air conditioner off this. So yeah, I felt pretty bad that we have this nice generator that we don't use anymore. But as long as I run on propane, I'm not clogging up the carburetor with gasoline, which is what happened to that one that I messed up. I messed it up by myself. That was a block one. Now, while I'm on the subject, I want to talk about this device. If you had a second generator you can buy a device that will tie the two generators in together, and you can get double the amps. So I think this one is about 16 amps, just over 15 amps, which is about what your socket, your wall socket is, 15 amps, 15. And then you have a surge of 20 amps. So the 2500 watts takes that surge up to 20 amps. So startup watts and then running watts. So that's what your amps are in that plug-in. Same thing with this. But if you need more amps for your camper, because it has a huge wire and you can run a lot of equipment inside your camper, all of the little sockets are 15 amps, but you got multiple sockets. So if you wanted more power, you can tie in two of these generators. Now, somebody will say, well, why don't you just buy a bigger generator? Well, if you don't need a bigger generator all the time, you just need it occasionally, then that's a waste of money, and they're heavy. This one, the dual fuel, is $5.99 on Amazon. You can just get a gasoline for $4.99. Same size, everything, it's just gasoline, it's not dual fuel. So much cheaper. And you know, people talk about Hondas. Oh, you should get a Honda. Yeah, this is better than a Honda. I've come to the conclusion, I'm not going to argue with the trolls anymore. This is just better than a Honda. You spend a lot more money for a Honda, and you don't get near the runtime out of it, I've heard. So but you can buy this adapter, and you can get a 30 amp plug or a 50 amp plug into it. Now you only get 30 amps out of it when you do the dual, because this one's 15 amps, that one's 15 amps, or 16 amps actually. So you're not getting 50 amps, you get a 50 amp. It's all RV talk is what it is. RVs you can get an RV with a 50 amp plug, and so when you rent a RV camp spot, they have different plugs, 50 amp, 30 amp, 15 amp, which is this right here. That's what this is, 15 amp. I think it's actually called 20 amp, but regardless. So sometimes you have to buy adapters because your camper is, I don't know, 50 amp or 30 amp, and so you got to be able to change it out. So if you had a second one of these, you could do it just like an RV camp spot. Well, as you know, I've been running this Welder, so this is where I start to tie in where the hobby business and the off-grid are starting to conflict with each other. I got this Welder, and as long as I'm running on about 50 amps, DC amps, so when you look at a Welder, it's about 25 volts. 50, well, it goes from 0 to 140 amps. You can dial it in. Well, I've been running about 50 amps because I run pretty thin materials around here. Occasionally, even the 50 amps will trip the breaker here. And I've always been a little worried ever since I got the Welder that I'm really stressing this generator out. And as much as I like it, I don't want to stress it out. So I've been trying to figure out what to do. Well, then the other day I welded a hammer handle on, and I ran it up to 75 amps, the Welder. And what it was is it would run for a few seconds on the startup wattage, 2500 watts, and then when the generator said okay, that was long enough, it would trip the breaker. Well, it got me through. It ran it good enough that I could run it for a few seconds, chip off the slag, run a few more seconds, chip off the slag. The entire time it was tripping. That's what was shutting me down, was it would trip, I'd chip off the slag. And I kept looking and researching to see if I was hurting my generator by doing that. And it said no. Inverter generators are very good at protecting themselves. So I decided I wanted to figure out something else. So I've been looking for a regular generator, just a industrial generator, not an inverter generator. Inverter generators is clean energy. It's 60 hertz, very consistent, 60 hertz, 110, 120 volts, whatever you got. Consistent amps, it's all very consistent. Whereas an industrial generator, based on its motor RPMs, will cycle. So you may not get 60 hertz, you may not get 120 volts. So when you're running that Welder and it starts to bog down, you lose your arc because you're not getting enough consistency from the generator. Well, I didn't know that until the other day when I started really digging into this. I'm glad I didn't buy one. It won't work. Several YouTubers have showed it just doesn't work. You get up past 80 amps on your welder and it just stops working. And those are the big generators too. But here I am, I'm running 75 amps on this one, and I'm not as big as that big generator because it's consistent. So I thought, well, maybe I'll get a new inverter for my solar panel system, and I'll start welding down there by the battery bank. And I looked at the prices of a 3,000 or 4,000 watt inverter, clean sine wave energy, true sine wave is what it's called, not modified but true, and they get really expensive really quick. And I thought, man, I don't want to spend this much money on I've been keeping a secret from you. I didn't see the point in telling anybody on YouTube what I had done, but a year and a half ago, maybe it was a year and a half ago, there was a sale on these. They dropped the price down to $4.99, and I told everybody about it on YouTube that there was a sale on them, and many of you got one. And that was great. They're like, hey, I'm a salesman for Champion. I wish they'd pay me. Well, I didn't tell you, but I went ahead and got one. And the reason I didn't tell you is if I can prevent a troll from criticizing me for something, I'm just going to try to prevent it. There was no reason to tell you I got one. There was no reason to stir up the trolls. Oh, there you go, just wasting money. You think you're telling everybody that you're saving money, but you just spin. I mean, I could hear it, so I didn't tell you, but we got one as a backup. Back then, we had several things going on, and we just felt like we needed a backup, and I didn't know how to explain it to the trolls, and I just didn't want to explain it. Well, so here we got a brand new generator. I didn't even take it out of the box until last night. So it's been sitting in a box for a year and a half, not doing anything. So last night I put a fuel filter on it, filled it up with oil, and it started right up. Put a little bit of gasoline in it. I've always known about this, where I could tie it in together. I've always known about it. I've just never seen a point in getting one. But they're not that expensive. So I got one of those last night. I won't get it till Monday. It's being shipped. But Monday, I want to test it. Monday or Tuesday, I want to test it. So I won't get time to tell you about this tie-in thing. I'll show it to you real quick, but I won't get to explain it. So what it does is, you have these things right here on both generators. And so you plug the red into the red, red into red, black into black, black into black. And it's got a little clamp. You can clamp it onto the handle, and then you plug a 50 amp adapter into it, or a 30 amp adapter into it. That reduces it down to a 20 amp plug, and I can run a welder off of it. Now, I'm getting a little confused why the welder takes so much energy. If I can plug it into the wall, I should be able to just run it, but the wall is only 15 amps. Well, I got to researching, and when you buy a welder like that, you should upgrade your electric so you got thicker wire and a higher breaker in your breaker box. A lot of people spend money to actually run a wire just for their welder into their shop. Now, the nice thing about this is this makes me mobile. If I wanted to go off site, I could. So what you do is you're going to run both generators at the same time and plug it in. So like I said, I got the adapter that reduces it down to 20 amps, so I can plug the welder into it, 110 volts. And then I'll be able to get up to, mathematically, it tells me I should be able to get up to about 115 amps on my welder. So 25 volts, 115 amps. Now, the only mathematical equation I got to learn on YouTube was from a guy using an industrial strength welder, and it didn't work. His mathematical equation didn't work. But then when you go and look at other videos, they don't give you the mathematical equation. What I saw was someone running a 4,500 watt, I think it was 4,500 watt inverter Champion generator. So I looked at the guy running an industrial generator, 80 amps. I looked at the guy running a same size inverter generator, and he went up to, I think, 130 amps. And he actually burned his metal because he was trying to stress it out. So this will give me 30 amps AC. So how do I explain this? Be 110 volts, 30 amps that I'll be able to get out of this. Even though it has a 50 amp adapter, that's all you can get out of is 50. So since I'm only on the cusp of one generator being able to handle this, both generators will be able to handle it just fine. And then I got to thinking, well, and I know this is stupid, but this is just how my brain is. We bought this as a backup, not as a primary. So what do I do? Well, we'll continue to use the old one. I've actually marked them. This one will be 1, this one will be 2. We'll continue to use this one until it dies, both as a regular generator to run the pressure washer and the grinder. This one will just be on standby and for the second welder. Now, I drain the gas out of these every time I run them. I might experiment to see if I can run it off propane now that I got 2 of them running. I don't know, I might. So I know the thing is, I absorbed a lot of information yesterday. Now I got to process it all. So I'm not able to speak very intelligently about the amps and the watts and all that, but it was enough for me to understand that these 2 generators tied together should run my welder. So I'm pretty excited. And I'm also pretty excited to get that adapter. I've always wanted one, but I just never had a reason to buy one. So we'll see you on Tuesday on this one. So I hope I can inspire you to do your homework so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.